Jackson Crown didn't even hear the glass shatter when it slipped from his hand, because the words his best friend whispered were far louder. "Those kids, they're not yours." In that single breath, the billionaire CEO felt his entire world tilt, as if the ground itself had betrayed him. And his wife, Amaya, the woman who had stood by him through every shadow, didn't defend herself. She only looked at him with eyes that carried a secret heavier than guilt itself. Before we dive into this emotional storm of love, betrayal, and the truth that can ruin or redeem a family, welcome to the channel. Tell me where in the world you're watching from, and if you're ready for the truth to hit like a punch to the chest, tap that like button to support the story. Now, let's begin. The city sprawled beneath Jackson Crown's glass tower like a kingdom built only for him: steel, shadow, and silence. Inside his office, everything was perfectly aligned: fountain pen angled precisely, documents squared, screens glowing with quiet authority. Jackson stood in front of the window in a tailored charcoal suit, one hand in his pocket, the other rolling the edge of his wedding band with mechanical repetition. He didn't notice he was doing it. He never did, these small, betraying cracks in the armor he crafted so carefully. Behind him, the soft click of the doors signaled Marek's arrival, but Jackson didn't turn. Marek never knocked, he walked into spaces like he owned them. "Your board is waiting," Marek said, his voice smooth, too casual. Jackson exhaled once, controlled, measured, before turning. "They can wait." Marek smirked. "They already do." He moved through the office, but his gaze didn't go to the spreadsheets on the wall monitors or the empire reflected on the glass. It went to the only warm thing in the room: a framed photo of Jackson's children, Cairo grinning with a missing tooth, Leora sticking out her tongue, little Naya asleep against Amaya's shoulder. Marek stopped in front of the photo. "They're getting big." Jackson watched him carefully, a subtle tightening in his shoulders. "Kids tend to do that." Marek's fingers brushed the frame, lightly, possessively, as if testing the grain of the wood. "You're lucky," he murmured. "A lot of men in our world never get a family like this." Jackson said nothing. Words weren't his thing. Control was. He stepped behind his desk, flipping open the morning briefing. But his eyes didn't track the text, because Marek wasn't looking at the photo anymore. He was looking at Jackson with a tiny, unreadable smile. "Everything okay?" Marek asked. Jackson raised a brow. "Should there be something wrong?" "Oh, I don't know." Marek shrugged, wandering the office like a man testing boundaries. "Sometimes, things shift. Families change. People hide things." Jackson's jaw flexed once. It was small, but Marek noticed. Marek always noticed. Jackson tapped the desk lightly. "What do you want?" Marek glanced at the elevator clock, pretending he was in a rush, though he was anything but. "Just checking in," he said. "You seemed distracted lately." "I'm not." "Sure." Marek let the word hang in the air before walking toward the door. But right before he pressed the handle, he paused, turned back, and looked again at the family photo. Too long. Too thoughtfully. Then, with a soft huff of amusement, he added, "Funny how life works, huh?" Jackson's fingers tightened around his pen, just enough for the metal to creak. He didn't look up. He didn't have to. His body betrayed all the tension in him that his voice would never show. When Marek finally left, the silence in the office settled like dust. Jackson leaned back in his chair and reached for the photo, not because he was worried, not because of Marek's tone, not because of anything he would admit. His thumb brushed over Amaya's face, then over Cairo's smile. Something in that small, instinctive movement made his throat tighten. It annoyed him. He placed the frame back. Perfectly aligned. Perfectly centered. Except it wasn't. The frame tilted half a degree left, and when Jackson tried to fix it, his hand slipped slightly. And for a man obsessed with control, that tiny error hit him harder than it should have. The pen rolled off the desk. He reached for it. And the moment his fingers closed around it, the office door handle clicked again. The office door handle clicked again. Jackson didn't lift his head this time. He expected Merrick returning for another jab, another comment with a blade hidden inside it. But the voice that followed was gentle, hurried, nothing like Marek's smooth venom. "Mr. Crown." It was Leanne, his assistant, poking her head inside. "Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt." Mrs. Crown called. "She asked if you could come home a little earlier today." Jackson's thumb froze against the cool metal of the pen. "Did she say why?" "No. Just that she'd like you home before 7. A small beat of silence. Thick, heavy. Jackson nodded once, curtly, dismissing her. Leanne slipped out as quietly as she'd entered. Jackson stood slowly. The room felt tighter, like the glass walls had leaned inward. Marek's lingering presence still clung to the air. He grabbed his jacket and left the office without another glance at the tilted photo frame that he hadn't quite fixed. He walked through the hallway, each step echoing on polished floors. People nodded respectfully as he passed, but he barely noticed. His mind had snagged on something, Amaya calling him home early. She rarely asked for anything. She didn't need to. But today, something pulled at him. He stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding shut with a soft whisper. The smooth descent felt strangely suffocating, like the walls were closing in around a man who'd always insisted everything in his life was in perfect order. His phone buzzed once in his pocket. Not a call. Just a photo notification, shared automatically from the home camera. He opened it. Amaya kneeling with Naya on the living room rug, helping the toddler fit colored blocks together. Sunlight streamed in across Amaya's face. Her smile was soft, tired in a gentle way. Not weak, never weak, but touched by a weight only she understood. Jackson stared at the image for a long moment as the elevator hummed. He didn't know why that photo tightened something in his chest. Didn't know why Marek's words earlier whispered back like a ghost. Funny how life works, huh? The elevator doors slid open. Jackson walked out without a sound. At the Crown home, POV shift to Amaya. Continuous transition, following Jackson's movement to the home, then shifting into Amaya's space as soon as he opens the front door. By the time Jackson pushed the front door open, twilight had softened the edges of the mansion. The scent of warm vanilla and something citrus, Amaya's diffuser, wrapped softly around him. The sound of children's giggles drifted from the living room. But what hit him first wasn't sound. It was a feeling. A quiet warmth he recognized as her. Inside, Amaya Crown sat cross-legged on the carpet, guiding little Naya's hands as the toddler attempted to stack mismatched blocks. Cairo and Leora zipped around behind her, chasing each other with paper airplanes. Amaya didn't hear the door open immediately. She was humming under her breath, an old, soft tune that didn't belong to this home or this city. It belonged to another life she never spoke of. Her movements were slow, practiced, gentle. But beneath them, something trembled. Something she never let the children see. When she finally lifted her gaze, her eyes landed on Jackson standing in the doorway, still, silent, watching. A small smile warmed her face. "You're early." Jackson couldn't speak at first. He just nodded. Something in Amaya's expression shifted, almost imperceptibly, but there. She picked up on every change in him the way musicians hear notes shift in a song. She studied him quietly, her eyes dark and thoughtful. He wasn't angry. Wasn't tired. Wasn't distant. He was unsettled. And that alone sent a cold ripple through her stomach. She stood slowly, brushing her hands on her soft linen pants. "Kids, give Daddy a hug before dinner," she said lightly. Cairo rushed forward first, gripping Jackson's legs. Leora followed, wrapping her arms around his waist. Even Naya toddled over, arms up. Jackson hesitated, just half a second too long. But Amaya noticed. She always noticed. Naya's tiny fingers tapped Jackson's knee impatiently, breaking the tension, and Jackson finally bent down to scoop the toddler into his arms. "Hi, sweetheart," he murmured. Amaya watched him with soft eyes, but her chest tightened. The shift in his body, the heaviness in his movements, she recognized the signs. Something had been said to him. Something dangerous. She felt the warning before she knew its shape. A whisper in her bones. She forced a breath and turned toward the kitchen. "Dinner's almost ready. I made the dish you like." Jackson didn't answer. And that silence, that small, unnatural silence, made Amaya pause mid-step. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. She didn't turn around. But her voice, when it came, was soft. Measured. "Jackson, who talked to you today?" Behind her, the house felt suddenly too still. The children's laughter echoed faintly somewhere upstairs. And Jackson, standing in the doorway, holding Naya, didn't answer. Not yet. Jackson, standing in the doorway, holding Naya, didn't answer. The silence inside the house seemed to thicken like mist. Amaya's question still hung in the air behind her, soft yet sharp. "Jackson, who talked to you today?" But Jackson couldn't answer her. Not yet. Because to repeat Marek's words felt like letting them take root. And he wasn't ready to hear them out loud. Not in this house. Not in front of her. So instead, he murmured a quiet, almost strangled, "Later," set Naya down gently, and slipped into his office downstairs. Amaya didn't follow. She never chased him. She only listened, to his footsteps, to the quiet closing of the office door, to the fear rising in her chest like a tide she'd hoped would never return. The room lights flicked on automatically as Marek stepped inside Jackson's private conference space, a room few people entered, fewer understood. It was the quietest room in the entire tower. Soundproof walls, dim lighting, no cameras. The kind of room meant for confessions, deals, and poison. Jackson walked in after him, unscrewing a bottle of water, unaware he was stepping into a trap. Marek leaned against the long mahogany table, arms crossed. "You know," he began, tone casual, conversational, "I've been thinking." "That's rare," Jackson muttered, half a smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. Marek chuckled, but the sound didn't reach his eyes. "No, seriously. I've been thinking about family." Jackson froze at the word, just a fraction of a second, but Marek saw. Marek always saw. "Family?" Jackson repeated. Marek nodded. "We've been in this world long enough to see how fast everything can be taken." He walked slowly across the room, fingers drifting along the edge of the table. Loyalty. Bloodlines. Trust, gone in an instant. Jackson narrowed his eyes. "If you're trying to tell me something, just say it." Marek stopped walking. He turned toward Jackson fully. And his voice dropped into something quieter. Heavier. Meant to cut. "You ever notice your kids don't really look like you?" The water bottle slipped slightly in Jackson's grip. A tiny drop hit the carpet. The smallest error. Jackson's face didn't move, he trained it not to, but the temperature in the room seemed to shift. "What the hell are you talking about?" Marek raised his hands as if innocent. "Relax. I'm not saying anything. I'm just observing. You're stirring shit for no reason." "Am I?" Marek stepped closer, too close, the space between them shrinking into something suffocating. "Jax, we've known each other our whole lives. I would never lie to you about something this big." Jackson scoffed. "You've lied about plenty." "Sure," Marek shrugged. "But never anything that mattered." Jackson tilted his head, jaw tightening. "What exactly are you implying?" Marek's eyes drifted to the family picture on the wall, a larger version of the frame on Jackson's desk. Just that, things aren't always what they seem. Jackson followed his gaze, his muscles tensing. Say it plainly. You want plain? Merrick asked softly. Then he stepped right beside him, lowering his voice in a way that made it feel like a surgical incision. Cairo's hair, that shade isn't from your side. Leora's eyes, those aren't your mother's. And the youngest, Merrick clicked his tongue. Well. Anyone with eyes can see she looks nothing like you. Something inside Jackson went still. Too still. Merrick watched him like a man studying a crack forming in glass. I'm not trying to hurt you, he added softly. I'm trying to protect you. If there's something she's hiding, better you know now. Jackson's breath left him in a slow, dragged-out exhale. You're wrong, he said. Am I? Merrick leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. Or are you just afraid to find out? Jackson shoved the chair back with force, the legs scraping sharply across the floor. This conversation is over. But Merrick smiled, quiet, satisfied. Sure. But the thought isn't. Jackson's fists curled. His voice dropped into cold steel. Leave. Merrick smirked. Just looking out for you, brother. He walked toward the door, but paused just long enough to stab one final sentence into the air. You of all people should know, betrayal starts at home. Jackson blinked as the memory faded, leaving him alone in the dim home office. His hand rested on the edge of the desk, and he realized it was trembling. He tried to steady it. He couldn't. The door creaked softly. Amaya stood there, one hand on the frame. She didn't step inside. She didn't intrude. But her eyes searched him, gentle and piercing all at once. Jackson, she whispered, what did he say to you? Jackson lifted his gaze slowly. Something fractured inside him, but he held the pieces together with sheer will. He said something, Jackson murmured. Something I don't even want to repeat. Amaya's breath caught in her throat, but she stayed silent. Jackson's voice dropped, rough. And I don't know whether to ignore it, or ask you. He said something, Jackson murmured. Something I don't even want to repeat. And Amaya stood in the doorway, breath held, waiting for a truth he couldn't yet give voice to. The moment he lifted his eyes to her, the air in the office felt too tight, like the walls were leaning in, listening. Jackson pushed up from the desk abruptly, brushing past Amaya as though staying in that room any longer might suffocate him. He didn't storm out. He didn't slam anything. He simply moved with that dangerous, quiet tension of a man who was beginning to doubt the ground under his feet. Amaya followed him, not with steps, but with her gaze. Her fingers pressed lightly against the doorframe, as though steadying herself against a truth she could feel approaching. Jackson walked into the hallway. The house, their usually warm, lived-in, messy, beautiful home, felt suddenly unfamiliar to him. A shadowed version of itself. Like every edge had sharpened in his absence. The sound of small feet pattering across the hardwood broke through the air. Daddy! Cairo darted toward him first, bouncing with the same endless energy he always had. And Jackson froze. He didn't mean to. He hated himself for it even as it happened. But he stared, too long, too intensely, at the boy's face. At the slight curl of his dark hair. At the angle of his jaw. At the way he smiled with no hesitation, pure light. Marek's voice slid back into Jackson's mind like a snake. Anyone with eyes can see. Cairo tugged his sleeve. Daddy? Are you okay? Jackson blinked, forcing warmth into his voice. Yeah, bud. Yeah, I'm okay. He rested a shaky hand on the boy's head. Leora came next, carrying her drawing pad. She held it up proudly. Look. I made a picture of the whole family. Jackson looked. And for the first time, he saw differences instead of resemblance. Differences he had never cared about, never even considered, until Marek's poison crawled into his bloodstream. His throat tightened. He pushed a smile. It's beautiful. But Leora tilted her head, studying him like she could read the truth written across his face. Daddy, why do you sound weird? Amaya stepped into the hallway now, walking slowly, deliberately, her presence steadying the atmosphere like she always did. She smiled at the kids. Hey, why don't you two go finish your game in the living room? Dinner's almost ready. Cairo shrugged. Leora lingered a second longer, then followed. The children's footsteps faded down the hall. And the house returned to silence. A different silence. A dangerous one. Amaya turned toward Jackson fully now. What did he say to you? She asked softly. Jackson didn't answer. His eyes flicked toward the living room where the kids were laughing again, so innocent, so unaware that their father's mind had turned into a battlefield. Amaya moved closer. Her voice lowered. Jackson, talk to me. He exhaled slowly, jaw tightening. Not here. Then where? He looked at the floor. Just, give me a second. But she shook her head gently. You're scaring them. He flinched at that. A flicker of guilt, sharp and immediate. I don't want to scare anyone, he said quietly. Then tell me what's wrong. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't desperate. It was steady. Heartbroken. Trying to hold something fragile together while he quietly pulled away. Jackson rubbed a hand over his face. Merrick said something stupid. He always does. This time it was different. Her chin lifted slightly. Different how? Jackson looked up at her, really looked. Those soft brown eyes. The face he loved without question. The woman who had walked through fire with him. He wanted to tell her. He almost did. But the words lodged in his throat. I don't know if I believe him, he whispered. Her chest rose sharply, fear flashing across her features like lightning behind clouds. Believe what? Before he could respond, before the truth could spill, Naya squealed from the living room. Mommy, look. I made a tower. Amaya closed her eyes softly, as though the interruption cut a thread between them. Jackson stared past her, listening to the sound of his children play, sounds that felt suddenly distant, like he was hearing them through glass. Amaya opened her eyes and looked at him. Whatever he told you. I need you to trust me before you trust him. Jackson didn't speak. That silence was an answer she wasn't ready for. Footsteps, small, stumbling, approached. Cairo peeked around the corner. Mom. Dad. Are you mad? Amaya forced a smile. No, sweetheart. We're just talking. Go play. Cairo nodded and disappeared again. But when his footsteps faded, something sharp flickered across Amaya's face, like she felt the truth hovering between them. What did he say about our children? She asked quietly, almost breathlessly. Jackson, tell me. Jackson's eyes finally lifted to hers. And the world seemed to hold still. I'm not ready to say it, he whispered. I'm not ready to say it, Jackson whispered. And Amaya stood perfectly still, her heart pounding against a fear she had hoped she'd never face again. The rest of the evening moved like a film on mute. Dinner simmered on the stove. The kids laughed over spilled juice and broken crayons. Amaya tried to keep the rhythm of the home alive, stirring, wiping, smiling, but her eyes kept flicking toward Jackson. Every time. He was distant. Present in body, gone in mind. He sat at the table with the kids, eating mechanically. When Naya smeared mashed potatoes on his sleeve, he didn't even glance down. When Leora asked him to help glue a page back into her sketchbook, he didn't hear the first 3 times. And when Cairo leaned comfortably against his side, as he always did, Jackson froze, just for a moment, before adjusting his arm around the boy in a way that felt forced. Overthought. Studied. Amaya saw it. Every single detail. Because a mother notices everything. And a wife notices even more. The children went to bed with their usual chatter. Cairo insisted on one more story. Leora wanted the closet light on. Naya needed her blanket warmed in Amaya's hands so it's soft. Jackson usually joined bedtime rituals. Tonight, he lingered in the hallway instead, arms crossed, head bowed, watching them from a distance like a man unsure of his place. When the kids were finally asleep, Amaya walked out of the last bedroom and closed the door gently behind her. The hallway was dark. Jackson wasn't there. A faint sliver of warm light spilled into the hallway from downstairs. Her breath caught. She knew exactly where he was. She descended the stairs slowly, each step controlled, quiet, but drawn by something heavy, inevitable. When she reached the bottom, she turned toward the living room. There he was. Jackson stood in front of the fireplace, the soft glow of the lamp painting half his face in gold, the other in shadow. In his hands were the framed photos, the ones from their last family trip to the beach. The one where Amaya held Naya on her hip. The one where Cairo sat on Jackson's shoulders. The one where Leora squeezed their cheeks, laughing too hard to keep her eyes open. Jackson wasn't just looking. He was studying. Comparing details with a quiet desperation that made Amaya's stomach twist. He lifted the photo slightly, squinting at the angles of Cairo's face. Her heart cracked. She stepped inside the room. Jackson. He didn't move. Didn't look up. Didn't even breathe, it seemed. Amaya swallowed. Put the pictures down. Jackson's jaw tightened. Slowly, he set the frame back onto the mantel, carefully, like he feared it might break if he touched it wrong. Only then did he turn toward her. Their eyes met. And in that one moment, one long, suspended moment, Amaya saw everything. The doubt. The fear. The betrayal he was terrified to believe. And the man inside him fighting not to fall apart. Her voice shook. He said something about them, didn't he? Jackson didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence confirmed every nightmare she thought she'd buried. She stepped toward him, one slow step. Jackson, please, tell me what he told you. He looked away. Her breath hitched. He told you they're not yours. His head snapped up, eyes wide, raw, wounded. She covered her mouth, her eyes filling. Oh God, he did. Jackson's chest rose, then stilled. His voice scraped out, Amaya, I don't want to accuse you. I don't. But what he said. She took another step. Jackson, those are your children. He clenched his jaw. Then why can't I stop thinking about what he said? His voice broke at the end. Amaya froze, as though that single crack in his voice sliced through her. He lifted a trembling hand toward the photo on the mantel. I look at them, and I see pieces that don't look like me, and I hate myself for even noticing. Amaya's eyes brimmed. You never noticed before. Because I trusted you, he said, voice low, wounded. Completely. A tear fell down her cheek. She took a step so small he barely saw it. Jackson, she whispered, look at me. He did. Slowly. Reluctantly. Painfully. Whatever he told you, she said, her voice trembling, you need to hear the truth from me, not him. Jackson swallowed hard. Then tell me, he whispered. A long silence filled the space between them. Amaya's hands shook as she clasped them together. Her voice lowered to a whisper threaded with fear. I will tell you, but once you hear it. Her breath trembled. You won't look at me the same. His heart stalled in his chest. Amaya, he said softly, stepping closer, what are you hiding from me? Her lips parted, Just slightly, as though she was about to confess something heavy, something dangerous, something that had been locked away for years. The air between them turned electric. Her eyes lifted to his. And in the smallest, quietest voice, she said, "Jackson. I need you to sit down. Jackson. I need you to sit down." Jackson didn't sit. He stood there in the middle of the dim living room, his chest rising and falling slowly, the glow of the lamp carving shadows across his face. His hands were half clenched at his sides, not angry, just bracing. Amaya watched him, her stomach tightening. Because she knew that posture. That stillness. That careful inhale. He was preparing himself to hear something that might break him. He just didn't know how close that truth already was. "Sit," she repeated, quietly this time, as though the softness of the word might make it easier. But Jackson shook his head once. "I'm fine standing." No, he wasn't. He looked like a man standing on a trapdoor. Amaya didn't push further. She lowered herself slowly onto the edge of the couch, fingers gripping her knees, steadying her breathing. She waited until he lifted his eyes to her again before speaking. "Merrick is lying," she began softly. Jackson closed his eyes like he wanted to believe that sentence, needed to, but couldn't hold on to it. Amaya swallowed, forcing her voice steady. "But he said something that explains his fear. His anger. The reason he wants to hurt us." Jackson's jaw twitched. "Us? Or me?" "Both," she whispered. He took one tentative step forward. "Why? Why the hell would Merrick try to hurt you? He barely knows you." Amaya pressed her lips together, her breath trembling. "That's not true." Jackson stilled. Cold, sharp suspicion flickered across his eyes. A misunderstanding blooming like poison. "What do you mean he doesn't know you?" His voice was low. Controlled. Dangerous. The kind of tone he used in boardrooms when someone tried to lie to him. Amaya lifted her palms gently, not to defend herself, but to slow him, to steady the air between them. "Jackson, please, listen all the way through before you decide what this means." He didn't sit. But he stepped closer, the distance shrinking between them. "Start talking," he said, voice rough. Amaya nodded slowly, gathering the words that had lived buried for years. "When I hesitated earlier," she said quietly, "it wasn't because what he said was true. It was because I knew what he wanted you to think. And I knew why." Jackson studied her, eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with the kind of fear that a man like him didn't know how to show except through hardness. "And why," he asked, "would Merrick want to destroy my family?" Her throat tightened. She dropped her gaze to her hands. "Because of something that happened before I met you," she whispered, "and something Merrick never wanted you to find out." Jackson's heartbeat slammed in his ears. He stepped closer still, one step, then another, until he stood just in front of her. He wasn't touching her. But the energy between them felt electric, taut. "Amaya," he said, voice strained, "be clear with me. Are you telling me Merrick knows something about you, something you hid from me?" She lifted her eyes. And the pain in them hit him so hard he almost stepped back. "Yes," she breathed. "Something I hid because I didn't want it to touch you. Or the kids. Or the life we built." Jackson's fingers curled inward. "And why would Merrick know it?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Jackson's chest tightened. "Amaya. Why would he know?" Silence. Painful, heavy silence. Her throat worked. Her breathing hitched. "Because." She forced the words out, voice breaking. "Because before I met you, Merrick was connected to a part of my past you don't know about." Every muscle in Jackson's body tensed. Connected. To her past. He felt the first spark of dread ignite inside him. What kind of connection? He asked, barely above a whisper. Amaya shook her head, tears forming but not falling. I'm trying to tell you. Give me a second. Jackson's voice hardened, not cold, not cruel, just deeply wounded. A second? Amaya, you've had years. Her breath caught. That sentence hit exactly where her guilt lived. She covered her face with her hands. I know. And I hate myself for it. But Jackson, you need to understand, I didn't keep it from you because I didn't trust you. I kept it hidden because it was dangerous. He stared at her, stunned. Dangerous? She nodded. Yes. For who? He whispered. Me. You. Our kids. Her silence was the answer. A muscle in his cheek ticked. His voice sank into something hoarse, almost pleading. Amaya, look at me. She lowered her hands, eyes full of fear and something like shame. He crouched in front of her, his face inches from hers, even though he didn't realize he'd moved. Tell me what happened. Her lips trembled. She wanted to. He could see it. She was fighting her own mind, her own memory, her own fear. I will, she whispered. But Jackson, you have to promise me you'll listen all the way through. Don't jump. Don't assume. Just, listen. Jackson's throat tightened. Amaya, he said softly, every second you don't tell me, it feels like you're confirming something. She shut her eyes, pain ripping through her expression. Jackson, no. No. Please, no. She reached for his hands. He let her take them, but his fingers didn't interlace with hers the way they usually did. He didn't pull away. He just didn't hold on. Amaya felt that difference like a knife. She squeezed his hands gently anyway. The kids are yours. They are yours, Jackson. In every way. I swear on my life. His breath left him slowly. Relief tried to surface, but the fear still lingered. Then tell me what Merrick knows, he whispered. Amaya inhaled shakily. Her voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible. He knows what happened before I met you. And he knows what I had to survive. Jackson's eyes widened slightly. Survive? Amaya lifted her head, eyes glistening. He knows who hurt me. Jackson froze. Completely. Amaya's voice cracked open. And he knows that if you ever learn the full truth, he'd lose the only leverage he has over us. Jackson swallowed hard. Amaya, what do you mean leverage? Her lips trembled. Then. I'll explain, she breathed. But you have to ask the right question first. Jackson stared at her, heart hammering. What question? Amaya lifted her eyes to his. The one Merrick wants you to ask. His voice broke through the silence. Amaya, are you about to tell me something about the kid's father? Her breath stopped. Her heart stuttered. Her eyes glistened, widening. And she whispered. Jackson, please sit down first. He didn't sit. He couldn't. The room felt hot, suffocating, like the walls themselves were waiting for the next word out of her mouth. Jackson took a slow step back, as if distance might give him clarity. Amaya, you're scaring me. Just say it. Her breath trembled. She stood too quickly, hands shaking at her sides. I don't want to hurt you. You already are, he whispered. That sentence hit her so hard she flinched. Jackson dragged a hand down his face, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying not to see Marek's smirking face in his memory. His voice was raw when he spoke again. What is this about? Why would Merrick know something I don't? What the hell happened before I met you? Amaya pressed a hand to her chest as if physically holding something inside. Jackson, listen to me, this isn't what you think. He barked out a quiet, humorless laugh. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like he knows something about my family that I don't. The word "my" wasn't lost on her. Her voice broke. Jackson, please don't say it like that. He froze. Their eyes locked. Something sharp flickered between them. Jackson took a breath, deep, careful, steadying. And then, finally. Amaya. He swallowed hard. Are the kids mine? The question dropped into the room like an explosion. The lights didn't flicker. The walls didn't shake. But everything in Amaya's expression shattered. She inhaled sharply, as if punched. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She reached for something, words, courage, air, but her body betrayed her, trembling under the weight of a secret she had carried so long it had become part of her spine. Jackson's voice was a whisper now. Amaya, answer me. She pressed a fist against her mouth, tears spilling silently. Jackson, she choked, you're asking the wrong version of the right question. That only made dread coil tighter in his chest. He stepped closer, desperation cracking through his voice. Just tell me the truth. Her eyes squeezed shut. Her breathing came in uneven waves. I promise you, she whispered, they are yours. They are your children in every way that matters, every way that counts, every way except. She stopped herself sharply, hand covering her mouth. Jackson's blood ran cold. Except what? She shook her head violently, stepping back. No, I didn't mean it like that, please don't twist it. Amaya. His voice dropped into something hoarse, wounded. Except what? She turned away from him, clutching her elbows like she was holding her own body together. Her voice shook. You don't understand the kind of past I had. Then help me understand. She wiped at her face. I don't know how. Try. She pulled in a breath that sounded like a sob she was trying to swallow. Jackson, I did not cheat on you. I have never betrayed you. Not once. He closed his eyes, relief fighting with fear. But something is still wrong, he said quietly. I can feel it. Yes, she whispered. Because the truth is ugly. Jackson's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in fear. Tell me. She turned toward him again. This time, when their eyes met, something raw and hollow stared back at him. Not guilt. Not deception. Pain. Deep, buried, terrifying pain. Before I met you, she whispered, my life wasn't normal. I didn't grow up safe. The people around me weren't safe. Jackson's brows furrowed. What does that have to do with our children? Everything, she breathed. He stepped forward. Amaya, did Merrick hurt you? Her eyes widened, horrified. No. God, no. Not like that. But he knew the people who did. Jackson's stomach twisted. What people? Amaya shook her head, tears falling faster now. If I tell you everything, I need you to understand. I wasn't hiding because I didn't love you. I was hiding because the truth brings danger. Jackson's voice fell to a whisper. Danger to who? Her answer was barely audible. To our children. Jackson's heart slammed. Amaya, what danger? Her chest heaved. The kind that doesn't go away. The kind that follows bloodlines. His blood ran cold. Bloodlines. And Merrick, she whispered, he used to work for the man who hurt me. The man I escaped from. Jackson felt the world tilt slightly. He knows, she continued, voice cracking, what that man did to me. He knows what that man wanted. And he knows why I ran. Jackson stepped closer, slowly, fearfully, like approaching something fragile. Amaya. She covered her face with both hands and sobbed, I wasn't supposed to survive him, Jackson. Jackson felt all the breath leave his lungs. I wasn't supposed to have a normal life. I wasn't supposed to marry someone good. I wasn't supposed to have children who were safe. She sobbed harder. And Merrick, he knows that if you learn what happened to me, he loses all the control he's trying to claw back. Jackson stood frozen. Silent. Breathing hard. Finally, he managed. Amaya, what does this have to do with whether the kids are mine? She lifted her head slowly. And whispered. Because the man I escaped from, he believed he owned everything he touched. Including me. Including anything that came from me. Jackson's entire body went cold. Amaya. She shook her head. No, Jackson, they are yours. They're yours in every way that matters. But Merrick wants you to think otherwise because... Her voice broke. Because if you doubt them, you'll doubt me. And if you doubt me, you won't trust me enough to hear the rest. Jackson stared at her, breath trembling. Then tell me the rest, he whispered. Amaya wiped her face slowly, the fear in her eyes deepening. I will, she said softly. But the next part is the darkest part.